Hari Om and Namaste. We are excited to welcome everyone to this unique 4-day workshop series called Guiding Nature, including all those of you who are physically present at Chinmaya Mission Cleveland, all of you are joining us on Zoom, and all of you who are watching on United Consciousness YouTube channel. Today's program will feature our respected guide, Sri Vivek Gupta, followed by an environmental expert and a question and answer session. Let me take a few moments to introduce Sri Vivek Gupta for those of you who are new to our community. Vivek ji, as he is popularly known, grew up in Canada. After attending a prestigious business school and running a multi-million-dollar business, Vivek ji sought more from life. This led him to join the Chinmaya Mission's monastery in India, where he completed 2 years of training to become a monk under the guidance of the spiritual master, Swami Tejomayananda. Since then, and for the past 16 years, Vivekji has dedicated his life to make the oneness vision of Vedanta accessible and relatable across generations and cultures. Vivekji is the spiritual guide for Chinmaya Mission centers in Cleveland and Niagara. And today, thousands of seekers from across the world engage with Vivekji across various offerings, be it daily inspiration of Bhagavad Gita, weekly courses, monthly workshops, or year-long self-development challenges like the Dedicating to Devi challenge in support of Mother Earth. I offer my humble pranams to Vivekji on behalf of all of us.
Hari Om, and greetings from Cleveland, Ohio, which is in America. I welcome all who are joining us from America, joining us from Canada, joining us from Europe, joining us from India. Through Zoom, everyone who is joining us through Zoom, I'd like to see your smiling faces. And everyone who's joining us through YouTube, though I can't see you, you're still allowed to smile. You're still encouraged to smile. Vasudeva Kutumbaka. How many of you have heard of this phrase before? By a show of hands. Lots. Vasudeva Kutumbaka is a teaching, is a message from the Veda. And the meaning of this phrase is Vasudha means the earth. Eva means alone. Kutumbaka means family. All on earth are a family. This extends to humans, to animals, to plants, to stones. Vasudeva Kutumbaka is a prominent message in Sanatana Dharma and Bharatiya culture. You must have seen this as the slogan of many mandirs and organizations. This is not just a prominent message, but a relevant message too. The G20 is a group of the 20 largest economies in the world. This is made up of 20-ish countries. I say 20-ish because the European Union is included in this. This year, India is the host of the G20, has the presidency, And India has adopted this message from the Veda, Vasudeva Kutumbaka. The government of India has furthermore zoomed into this by sharing this message can be practiced as one earth, one family, one future. Now, to engage in spreading one earth, one family, one future, the government has given this responsibility to certain organizations to be international coordinators for them. Two of those organizations are Chinmaya Mission and United Consciousness, which I am honored to be part of both of these organizations as a guide, as an advisor. I am honored that I get to be part of this and much more. And I'll share more details about the much more in time. The this, we are all gathered for a workshop on guiding nature, specifically focusing on one earth, which is so aligned with Vasudeva Kutumbaka. In this workshop, I will be sharing insights on how our environment is comprehensively teaching us how to love. And followed by my sharing, within our community, there are scientists, there are experts who will share how the environment loves us and how we can reciprocate the same. As I'm sharing, as our experts are sharing, please note your questions. This is a workshop, so at the end of the workshop, if anyone has any questions, you can ask them. How is nature guiding us? Bhagavata is an educational scripture. Here's a volume of Bhagavata for your reference. In Bhagavata, the focus is on Sri Krishna, who is an expression of divinity, is an expression of love. And one more facet of Sri Krishna you may not be so clear about, he loves the environment. He is an awesome environmentalist. He describes that the most fortunate beings on this earth are trees. He uses the phrase Mahabhaga, the most fortunate. I had shared how Sri Krishna is an environmentalist last year in a workshop entitled Our Shastra on Our Environment. How our scriptures are helping us to be environmentalists. Bhagavata has 12 sections. The 11th focuses on mukti, or how to be free, how to be independently joyous. In this section, a seeker like us, the name given to him is Rishi Uddhava. He is asking Sri Krishna, how can I be free like you? How can I be independently joyous? And Sri Krishna responds to him sharing, you have to know that you are your own source of joy. You are your own source of joy. That is a comprehensive message about us taking responsibility for our own lives. When Rishi Uddhava is told this, he's unable to feel this. He doesn't feel that he's his own source of joy. And so Sri Krishna follows up by encouraging him to learn more from his own life, to learn more from nature. And he goes on with a narration or an example of one who has learned lots from life, learned lots from nature, and has found this source of joy. So this narration takes us to a jungle. How awesome that we're in a workshop on guiding nature and it's taking place in the jungle. Zoom and the jungle. Bhagavata is known as a Purana, which means it's Pura, it is ancient, and Nava, which means applicable. There is a seeker by the name of Raja Yadu. And he's in this jungle, just exploring, trying to find himself. For anyone who tunes into Chinmay Mission Niagara's social media accounts on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, today there was a quote about how when you lose yourself in the forest, you lose your mind and find your spirit. Very apt for what is shared in Bhagavata. So Raja Yadu is in this jungle and he sees a seeker who's much younger than him, sees a seeker who was way less than him, but this seeker is shining outwardly and inwardly. Note I said inwardly because you're all thinking this seeker was in a jungle in India. It's hot. It's humid. He's just sweaty. Inwardly also. And he goes to this seeker and shares with him that I have everything outside, but I don't feel everything inside. It's like I have a rich body, but a poor mind. You comparatively have nothing outside. You're living in the jungle, but it feels like you have everything inside. Like you may have a poor body, but you have a rich mind. How? How have you found this fullness, this completeness, this joyousness? This young seeker is known as a avadhuta, one who lives naturally. And he goes on to share that I have learned from nature. I've learned from nature to live naturally. That's good marketing, right? Guiding nature, learning from nature. We didn't come up with this casually. We thought this through, okay? And this avadhuta shares with Raja Yadu, is sharing with all of us that he has found 24 teachers in his own life that are pointing out the source of joy being himself. We don't have enough time to explore all 24 of these teachers, so I've actually filtered out the ones that are not directly related to nature, but there are 16 that are overtly within nature. And we will cover 4 of these teachers each evening and how they're showing us that we are the source of our own joy. Nature is amazing. Nature is guiding us to joy. The first guide in nature is Prithvi. Prithvi. All those who are joining us through Zoom and YouTube, please share in the chat. Please type out, what does Prithvi mean? Prithvi means earth. Prithvi means the daughter of Raja Prithu. Raja Prithu was one who loved the earth so fully, he felt the earth was his daughter, so the earth came to be known as Prithvi. Prithvi, this avadhuta observed, is one that is constantly taking a beating from those on her. The only time that we're not pounding the earth is when we're lying in our bed, correct? It's our own feet, it's the tires on our cars and so on. Does the earth ever pound you back? From the earth, what this avadhuta learned is to forgive. To forgive. Now think of this logically. The more forgiving you are, aren't you closer to joy? Don't you feel more lighthearted then? to forgive. Now, this is not new to everyone. There's a million quotes on how we should forgive. I'm going to try to magnify this more. My master, my guide, Puja Swami Tejomayananda, has shared the way that we should love is you start by loving thyself. Then, if you do this, if that's checked off, next is love thy neighbor. And if that's checked off, then love thy mother. Here, mother is not the biological mother, but that which unites all of us. Love thyself, love thy neighbor, love thy mother. For each of these facets of nature, I'm going to try to share a practice in relation to thyself, thy neighbor, thy mother. Okay? So starting with, how can I practice forgiveness in reference to love thyself? We can practice this by giving ourselves what we need. So all those who are joining me live in Cleveland, what do we need the most? Don't say food, we just ate. What do we need the most? Unconditional happiness. Yes, exactly. Give yourself what you need. What you need is happiness, is joy, is peace. Now think practically. If you're feeling so happy and someone comes and insults you, do you even register that insult? When they insult you, you laugh more. They're laughing at you, you laugh at yourself also. Give yourself what you need. When one is happy, they become unoffendable. And really, that's the highest form of forgiveness, is to not take offense in the first place. Awesome. We learned this from Prithvi. How can one practice this in terms of love? To forgive is to love thy neighbor. It is to acknowledge that all are journeying. Nobody is completely imperfect as much as you feel that they are. They're not. And nobody is completely perfect. So we make mistakes. And if you acknowledge that everyone's on this journey, they're making mistakes, but they're growing out of those mistakes too. If you don't forgive them, how can they grow out of those mistakes? In my travels, I drive a lot. I come across a lot of restaurant signs, church signs, and so on. So one sign I saw said, "We all make mistakes," and mistake was spelt wrong. So to acknowledge that. Now, how do we forgive in reference to love thy mother? Now, I feel this is perfect, because who is our mother? Prithvi, nature. It is to refuse. To refuse to buy anything, to have anything that harms our mother. If you remember, some years ago, there was a significant effort to ban plastic bags. And how was that done? By buying cloth bags, correct? And now it's gone even more so, where you can't even get plastic bags anymore. See, it's not about reducing plastic bags, it's about refusing them. Refuse to harm your mother, my mother anymore. I was just speaking to a teacher who teaches in a rougher part of the city. In the rougher part of this city, it is harder to come across healthy food, correct? I think they call them food deserts, I think. So now, if you feel that you're privileged, financially privileged, the purpose of your money is to buy that which is less harmful for the earth. Whether it's foods or soaps or cars or clothes. Otherwise, what's the purpose of your money? Refuse. Awesome first guide. Okay, we continue. The second guide is Vayu. Vayu. In English, this means air, sometimes translated as wind. What Avaduta observes is that the air, the wind, is going everywhere in an unbiased way. If I held a rose right now and the wind blew by this, it wouldn't touch the petals more and the thorns less. And also, it wouldn't be affected by the petals or the thorns. And so this can be distilled for us. What we can learn from Vayu is to purify. To purify. Many of you have studied this scripture on devotion with me. And recently I was sharing with you a humorous term called Durvata. Durvata means foul air. And the sandhi of this gets combined into fart. And imagine when there's foul air somewhere and then someone opens the window, how relieved one feels, how pure one feels. So we learn to purify. How do we do this in reference to ourselves? Think positively. Don't you feel better when you think positively? You feel more cheerful, you feel more enthusiastic, you just feel more pure. If you have very violent thoughts right now, or if you have very lusty thoughts, you feel less clean. You feel polluted inside. How does one practice purify in terms of loving thy neighbor? It is to use pure words or positive words. Positive words. We casually use a lot of negative words. Even casually, I don't even mean curse words, but words like stupid and idiot and dumb. And saying that we don't realize the harm this is causing on us and the person who's exposed to this, to use positive words. And then continuing with this framework, how does one practice to purify in reference to our mother? It is positive actions, positive thoughts, positive words, positive actions, specifically to plant trees and protect trees. When I use the word nature and purify, doesn't your mind go to trees and how they purify the air that we breathe? Yes. I feel even more than pure water, we think of pure air. Our community right now is aspiring to plant 1,000 trees by Mother's Day, our Mother's Day. We have planted 94, but I know we will. I know we will. And we're aspiring to protect through funding more than 25,000 trees. Thus far, our community has raised $12,588. So we're more than halfway there. And we will complete this aspiration by our Mother's Day. To plant and to protect. In guiding nature, who is our third guide? The Avaduta sees Akasha. Akasha in English means space. Space. And what this person who's full inside observes is that space accommodates all types of humans and animals and plants and stones. Your best friend is in space. Your worst enemy is in space too, correct? The Americans, the Canadians, the Europeans, the Indians, everyone is in space. And so what we can practice is to accept. To accept. So 3 ways that we are being pointed to the source of joy: to forgive, to purify, and now to accept. How does one practice this in reference to loving thyself? Is to feel that you are a part of this whole. When everyone was studying from home, working from home, etc., people came to feel isolated. People forgot that they're still part of their families, communities, societies. We worked really hard together to make sure that we didn't feel isolated. You are a part of this whole. You are uniquely designed to contribute to your family, community, society. If you remember that, you become more accepting of yourself. In regards to thy neighbor, how can you accept thy neighbor? It is to focus on their strengths. Focus on their strengths. You probably don't know this, but finding a completely white, well-fitting kurta is very difficult. And so I have very few completely white, well-fitting kurtas, and to keep them cleaner is even more difficult. I was filling up gas on my way to a discourse in Toronto. And as I was pumping gas, I was just looking around, and I saw this older lady who was also pumping gas behind me, staring at me. And I thought, maybe she's looking past me. So I looked away, but secretly I wanted to, verify. So I looked back and she was still staring. So then I stared back and said, in the most sarcastic way, "Can I help you?" And she says, "How do you keep your clothes so white?" She was just curious. And my point here is that suppose I had a coffee stain here or some chocolate here. Now I often find things in my beard. Suppose there was a carrot right here. There's so much cleanliness on this white kurta, but we have this propensity to focus on that weakness, correct? On that deficiency. So we become non-accepting then. So with one's neighbor, focus on their strengths. With our mother, how can one love thy mother? It is not to, I'll use the word buy, consume. That's a better word. To not consume or consume less of that which is processed. That which is processed. If I take a cucumber from the ground and eat it, or I can take a cucumber, turn it into some sort of smoothie with a variety of chemicals in it, and then consume it, I'm sort of not accepting that cucumber then, correct? I'm not accepting the earth. So consume less of that which is processed. In Canada, a new law has been passed that no products, I think in reference to cosmetic products, can be sold that are tested on animals. That is a great moving forward in reference to if it's natural, it shouldn't harm animals, it shouldn't harm us, correct? If it's processed, then that's where the jeopardy is. And our final teacher for this evening, has 30 minutes gone by fast or slow for you? Don't answer. Don't answer. Think positive. Speak positive. It is apa. I'm not saying apa, though that works too, but apa. Apa in English means water. Water. What Avaduta shares with Raja Yadu, what I've learned from water is that it's so hot. And when people consume water, when they wash with water, they're relieved. They're replenished. And so what I've learned to do, and this is our practice, It is to refresh. Be a refreshing personality. For ourselves, how can we practice this? And I hope you'll practice this. It is to sleep early. When do you feel the least refreshed? When you binge on food and screens at night. Yes? Then the next day is compromised. And when do you feel great in the morning? When you're like a child, you go to sleep at 8:30 p.m., 9 p.m. This workshop's only starting at 9 p.m. because we want to connect to those in India. Otherwise, this would be too late. Sleep early. How does one practice this in terms of loving thy neighbor? It is to actively listen to them. One of the worst feelings is to feel dismissed. One of the worst feelings is when you're speaking and someone interrupts you. I feel that with Zoom. That's why our crew is so well trained to ensure that you're muted. And when you're not by accident, our crew and I have a meeting afterwards. To actively listen. When someone is actively listening to you, you feel refreshed, you feel cared for. And how to practice this in terms of our mother? Shorten your showers. Shorten your showers. If you shorten your showers, there's a fine chance you'll still smell as good. But imagine we all shortened our showers and we all smelt a little bit less good, but we all smell a little bit less good. So it's still practical, correct? Shorten your showers. In Bhagavata, what is shared is when you're showering, you should be chanting mantras. You should be speaking positive phrases. Now it's tiring, so you get out of the shower faster then, correct? So these are some ways that we can practice to refresh ourselves, our neighbor, our mother. Our earth feels us. And because our earth feels us, our earth is communicating with us through earth itself, through the air, through space, through water, and so many more guides that I will share. This workshop is to develop the ahimsa. Ahimsa means harmony, sensitivity to feel this communication. That is perfectly aligned with one earth is guiding us to one family. Let this be the one future. That's what Vasudhaiva Kutumbaka feels like. Not just a slogan, not just on a business card, but in reality. These are insights about the environment teaching us from the perspective of philosophy. Now we shift over to science. We shift over to a professional perspective for which we're going to tune into Insights on Climate Change by Hemali Basham. I'm going to share who our expert is. Hemali is a seeker and a Prithvi Mitra, a friend of the earth. She is also a corporate sustainability professional at Deloitte. The focus of her work is addressing climate change through the power of industry. She has an MBA from the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University. In her free time, she enjoys training for triathlons and is an avid scuba diver. She's also a yatri. Hemali and I and many others have traveled together to Sri Lanka in 2019. That's where I got to know Hemali well, and we've communed since then. Hemali and her husband Abhiram, who's also joining us, they recently had their first child, and despite the changes that come with being a new parent, They have continued to maintain a sustainable lifestyle. That's a great example for us. Hemali, please share away.
Hariom Vivekji, Hariom everyone. Thank you so much for having me today, and very grateful for the time that you are all providing me today to talk a little bit to you about climate change and why it's something that we should all have a strong understanding of what is happening and what we can do about it, because this is an urgent issue for our generation and for future generations. So a little bit about climate change. I think for most of us have heard about climate change, but just to give you a brief introduction, climate change really is this long-term change in weather conditions from a specific time of year in a specific location. And it is something that, I think has become a very political issue, and especially in the United States and in other parts of the world as well. But from a scientific perspective, nearly 100% of scientists agree that climate change is real, is happening, and it's caused by humans through our emissions related to greenhouse gas emissions, fossil fuel consumption. And there's a lot of technical things here that I'm going to I'll try to help you understand. But one of the main things that you might be hearing about climate change is this concept of 2 degrees or 1.5 degrees Celsius. And we need to keep below that global temperature rise. And I'll show you that in a second, but it's going to be really important for us to be able to do that to achieve, in order to avert the most sort of disastrous consequences of climate change. In order to do that, we really do have to consider Mother Nature and Mother Earth and use all the powers that we have by protecting, preserving, and using the powers of Mother Earth to help us absorb the greenhouse gases, but also reduce the emissions along the way, and use technology to capture that carbon as well. So a little bit about climate change, just to help you understand what it's about, if you're not as familiar. So over the course of thousands of years, if you see on this chart, carbon dioxide has been increasing in the atmosphere. If you look at this chart here, right, carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas emission that is released through human activities. And I'm going to ask you here to look at this chart and help, if you could just write in this chat, what are you seeing when you see this this chart, the historical CO2 level? Sudden rise, normal fluctuation, but now out of control. Exactly. And so one of the main things is that there is this natural cycle of CO2 that over the years increases and decreases, right? And so that's natural. And that over the last maybe 100 years or so, that has started to increase rapidly. So even from 1950 onwards, you're seeing this huge increase to currently where we're already over 420 parts per million of CO2. And CO2 is just one of the several greenhouse gases that's causing climate change. And this is the highest level it's ever recorded. And no doubt it's because of the industrial technology, the industrial age, the last 100 years or so. And as we think about what is happening when this carbon dioxide is emitted, there's a heat trap. There's this gas that gets trapped in our atmosphere, and it's global warming is a term that a lot of people don't like to use anymore, but it is causing these huge shifts in our climate that are leading to increased temperatures. It's kind of like having a blanket around the Earth, right? If you have a blanket around the Earth, what's causing is this huge shifts in currents in the way that temperatures and sea levels are rising, because as sea levels rise, when the increased temperatures, a lot of the glaciers are melting, so that's causing sea level rises. We're also seeing increased hurricanes, droughts, fires, heat waves, right? And all of these things that are happening are things that we're seeing today, and they're only going to get worse as this increases and as the temperature continues to rise, CO2 levels haven't been going down despite the many many technologies that we put out there and a lot of the commitments made by nations around the world. And how that's going to impact our lives is going to be around mortality with extreme weather events, food supply disruptions, global supply chain challenges. We saw that with the COVID pandemic, and water shortages, refugees, and ultimately, a lot of that also causes wars. Wars are fought over water. And I want to sort of emphasize that this is an urgent issue that's continuing to move forward, but we have a chance to change this. And as Vivekji was talking about Mother Earth and Mother Nature, one of the most important things is also climate change is impacting these biodiversity webs. So as we know, everything in this planet is connected. You can look at this biodiversity web here as an example, whether it's the fruit trees and how they're connected to the birds and how that's connected to the seedlings, to the snails, to earth. Everything is a circular connection. And when we disrupt one thing, everything gets impacted. And so there's this huge interconnectedness between what's happening with climate change and what's also happening with our biodiversity around the planet and how it's impacting Mother Earth. So that's also one of the biggest impacts that we're seeing along with climate change. So not only is climate going to impact us from a people and humanity from a tactical standpoint, right? Whether it's how we encounter more hurricanes, droughts, floods, things like that, but it's also impacting nature and biodiversity, and it's a huge part of that as well. In addition to that, it's impacting our oceans as carbon dioxide continues to be emitted and increases in our atmosphere. We're seeing warmer oceans. Oceans are becoming more acidic. There's less oxygen in our ocean. And currently, most of the ocean traps most of the heat and most of the carbon dioxide that's emitted in the atmosphere. And as the ocean gets warmer, its capacity to absorb that becomes less and less. And so what you're hearing is you're seeing sea level rises, right? It's going to impact coastal communities, but also we're going to see impacts related to bleaching, toxic algae. So if you live anywhere along the coastlines, you might be hearing about more of these algae blooms that are happening. I think there's one currently coming along the coast of Florida that impacts people who fish, birds, marine animals, and can make people sick. It also impacts habitats, leads to acidification, and disrupts the fisheries and the people who rely on fisheries for income and for food. So there's just tremendous impacts that are happening associated with the emissions of greenhouse gases around the world. And luckily, one of the things that's happening around the world is also that countries are coming together to address this. And it's not happening as fast as we would like, but last year, this November, leaders from over 200 countries came together along with private sector in Egypt for the 27th session of COP, which is the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. And coming out of that was the 27th meeting of this convention. And there has been a new sense of urgency that has shown that current countries' commitments are falling drastically short of the reduction that we need to make to limit the warming to 1.5 or 2 degrees Celsius. We do have a chance to shift course if we cut emissions in half by 2030. So that's basically in the path that we're moving forward. There is a chance to get there, but there has to be drastic changes that need to be made. And there's also this increased private sector emphasis around every company, every organization can do its part. And so I'll come back to that in a second as well. A little bit here about what is happening if we don't cut emissions, right? So in order to avoid the worst impacts of climate change, we have to limit it. I was talking about in Celsius, but it's also in Fahrenheit, about 3 degrees Fahrenheit or 1.5 degrees Celsius. And we're on track to get to 5.4 degrees Celsius, 5.4 degrees Fahrenheit, I'm sorry. But if we don't reduce our emissions at all and we don't keep up with the policies that are currently committed, we're looking at a 7-degree Fahrenheit temperature. And a 7 degrees doesn't seem like, maybe it doesn't seem like a lot, but 70 degrees is an average. 7 degrees Fahrenheit or 3 degrees Celsius is an average. And we're going to see huge amounts of fluctuation in that. So there could be summers get hotter and winters get colder. I know personally in the United States, what we're experiencing is that, for example, in Boston, our summers are getting increasingly hotter. I'm seeing 10 degree higher Fahrenheit temperatures in the summer and even colder temperatures in, in the winters. And so this has to be, we have to cut our emissions rapidly in order to avoid the worst impacts of climate change. And we need to act collectively, we need to act swiftly. And how do we do that? So from a broader standpoint, we have to decarbonize rapidly. We have to preserve nature. We have to preserve biodiversity. One of the biggest opportunities is around land and ocean conservation. Mother Nature is healing. Mother Nature has the ability to carbon sequestration, right? Mother Nature can take carbon out of the atmosphere into the soil, into the earth through plants, through the ocean. And there's a huge opportunity to make sure that we're preserving that. We're not cutting down more trees. We're not cutting down forests. We have to advance carbon removal technologies. So things like carbon capture, do it at scale, right? That technology is not there yet, but it's coming along. And then we have to also think about circular economy and reducing consumptions, moving away from our consumer-driven lifestyles in terms of buying less, wasting less, reducing less. And so that leaves us with a little bit around what actions we can take as individuals. And I think about this a lot because a lot of people say, it has to be the corporation that has to make that change. It has to come from government. But I personally believe that we all have an opportunity to do something, and we should. And whether that is something that you do in your personal life, or whether it's something that you can help with the community, there's a lot that can be done, and we all need to take action here. And so here are some things that I've laid out here that I think we can all try and do. And one of the biggest things is, if you own or if you rent a property, think about switching to renewable energy. And check with your utility provider if you can change the supply of your electricity to be renewable. Obviously, installing solar panels or geothermal energy is much more expensive. It's harder, but there are easier ways to switch to renewable energy. Especially if you live in the United States or if you live in Canada, you can actually change the supply of your electricity and where it's coming from by checking with your utility providers. You can fly less, take one less international trip, try to do a staycation or local vacation. Consume less, buy used items when you do buy better quality items and avoid fast fashion, repair things, make things last longer. Waste less food and compost. If you have a patio or a yard, get a compost tumbler or find a service in your city that can try and do that. And last but not least, and very importantly, vote and advocate. Elect leaders who are climate friendly, who have climate friendly policies, and advocate for local initiatives. All of these things are things that we can do. And ask your company, what is your company doing? If you work for a large organization, ask them what they're doing. What is their sustainability strategy? And how are they reducing their emissions and the products and the services that they're providing? Work within your community, if you don't work, think about, are there nonprofits in your organization, in your community that you can get involved with? So these are just a few of the ideas that I wanted to leave you with. And along with some resources as well that the team can send on. But I want to pause here and open this up to questions that I can help answer, or Vivekji can also help answer, because this is a complex topic and I threw a lot at you. So I'll pause here and happy to answer any questions for either for myself or for Vivekji.
Thank you so much, Himali, for your insightful and practical teachings. If you have any questions, you can virtually put your hand up and then you can ask it to Himali or myself. You can also write your question in the chat if you want to. Those who are on YouTube, you can write it there and our team can read it out to us. So be an active listener and ask. Ask how nature is helping us and we can help back. The home that I'm staying in right now, when I was here last month, I told them I'm not coming back if they don't have a compost bin. So now they do. That's why I'm here, right? I'm here right now. So I'm doing my part by forcing other people to practice. Any questions from anyone? Here too, if anyone has any questions live, yes, speak loudly so we'll try to connect this to me or Himali.
Yeah, so there are various ways we can tackle climate change effects and all, but I guess in research or what has the research, what is the most effective thing as an individual that one thing we can all do that we can start working towards? I know there are many ways, but
sure,
what does the research say? Like this one thing can actually make a big difference if everybody does it.
Yeah. So I'm repeating the question. What is the one thing that is most productive for an individual do to help with climate change? And this is to be researched. So my answer is get enlightened, but it's faith-based and not research-based. So Himali, please share your answer.
Thank you for that question. I'm going to answer that it depends a little bit on where you live. If you live in the United States, if you live in Canada, I would say it's actually vote, and not just your presidential elections, but your local elections, your regional elections, because that's really important in order to elect the leaders that we need to actually take action. So that's actually one of the biggest things, and that's actually quite easy to do, right? So everyone can do that. If you want something that's a little bit harder, I would say it is to go renewable. Find ways, and I was saying two different options here, right? One is if you have the capacity, if you have the finances to install renewable energy in your home, if you have an apartment, or if you don't have the ability to install renewable energy in your home, like solar panels, think about identifying your utility provider and seeing what percentage of your electricity is renewable. And for example, in the United States, in the state of Massachusetts where I live, about 24% of it is renewable by default. All energy coming through is renewable. So what I've done is I've actually signed up for 100% renewable energy supply plan. Maybe it costs me $2 to $3 extra per month, but I know that my electricity is 100% renewable. And usually your utility comes in two forms. It's the supply and it's the delivery. And so the supply is what you're changing. You're changing where it's coming from. You can choose that to be, and anyone can do that. At least I know for sure in the United States, in most states, you can choose a cleaner supply, and I'm sure it's the case in Canada as well. In India, there might be other options as well in terms of finding solar community projects. You can purchase green certificates and things like that as well. So there are certainly things that you can do, but I would say that's my number one thing that I believe we can all do.
Thank you, Himali. And in case anyone missed it, though you're actively listening, is vote for the right people because they're implementing the long-term decisions that will affect all of us. The next question, this is in the chat. How is nuclear energy cleaner? My only reference to nuclear energy is from The Simpsons, which though it is highly scientific, I will let the scientist answer that. And Himali, if you can't, no worries. Someone will do some research and answer it tomorrow, but I'm sure you have an answer.
Yeah, I'm not a nuclear scientist, nor do I know a lot about nuclear energy, but from what I've understood and read, nuclear energy has, if you compare it to what we use right now, which is coal and natural gas and oil, all of that emits a lot more emissions in the atmosphere, whereas nuclear energy does not, right? You do have nuclear waste, but that does not emit emissions into the atmosphere in the same manner. And so there are risks associated with nuclear energy, obviously. So And I know there's a lot of debate about that, but it is certainly cleaner form of energy, and it's scalable. It's massively scalable to the point where it's one of the main areas that if we can make it safe and we can scale it, it's one of the biggest ways that we can actually transition away from fossil fuels.
Awesome, Himali. That's a very sound answer. I'm taking the last question for tonight. Could you suggest a good nonprofit organization that is doing good work in this space, climate change, that we could donate to and support? Since January of 2022, Himali, myself, we are part of Prithvi Seva Sangha. Everyone else who's part of this, please put your hand up. All of the hands that you see right now, including hands here. We are a community that is serving our earth, and part of this is to realize how privileged we are and to share that privilege in the long term, which means to be an environmentalist. And so we have selected many charities in 2022 and even presently that we're supporting. And I don't think there's a single environmental charity that we've given less than $25,000 to. And all of these charities, a group of people have vetted. They've looked into if they're big or small, their communication styles, how much money goes to administration. So if you have faith in this community, then the charities we're selecting, then those are charities that you can support. And they're diverse. Some are to water, some are to animals, some are in Africa, some are in South America. So this would be my answer to you, and our team will share those links in the chat to answer that, and I'll speak more about that in the coming evenings. Himali, I hope that's sufficient from your side also. Great. Okay, our time goes fast, so our discourse for myself and our scientists is complete. Our dialogue is complete now too. So to complete the workshop formally, I'm going to start with your RAD. This is your reflection adventure of the day. This is what you can practice right now, just like was shared in the last slide from our scientific perspective on guiding nature. Pick one of the insights that I had shared in terms of love thyself, love thy neighbor, love thy mother for any of the 4 teachers. So just to review, like, how do you practice to purify with others? Use positive words. How do you love thy mother in terms of to accept, to not consume that which is processed? So pick one and practice this. That's your adventure, your application of the day. Now, a couple of announcements, starting with the United Consciousness side. How many of you have never heard of United Consciousness before, by show of hands? Okay, a third of you. This is an organization that spans the world. Our advisors are in India, in South Africa, in Germany, in Mexico, in Canada, in America. And United Consciousness's effort is to create one being or recreate it. We're already one being, we just don't feel that. And this is facilitated in many ways. To know more about this, I'm encouraging everyone to go to the United Consciousness website. This is shared in the chat. This is on the YouTube channel. You will see the expansive work that's being done. And if I can share this in a very succinct way, we're trying to work with the United Nations so that whatever we are creating, whether it's a conclave or a manual, if this is supported by the United Nations, it will be proliferated in such a comprehensive way to schools, to hospitals, to corporations, because it has that seal of authoritativeness. And in terms of Chinmay Mission Cleveland, Niagara, a challenge that our community is engaged in right now is called dedicating to Devi. Devi is another word for Prithvi, and dedicating means that there's sacrificing that's happening. It means every day that we sacrifice $1, a minute, an action, that every day we're sacrificing the way that Prithvi sacrifices for us. We have dozens of people who are part of this challenge. And though we started some months ago, it doesn't matter. One can start right now. So that also is shared in the chat on our website. We will continue with Guiding Nature over the coming evenings, exploring more unique teachers, more unique practices, more unique scientists. Do continue to join us and invite your family and friends. Best is through Zoom. We're also communing through United Consciousness's YouTube channel. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Be safe, be sound, be serene, be joy.